Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the 2021 Ontario One Call Annual General Meeting to order. So on behalf of the Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Annual General Meeting. As a nonprofit with an open model of governance, member engagement is an important part of our mandate. This is the second year we have held our AGM virtually, obviously due to COVID. While we're not meeting in person, it's giving us a platform where everyone across the province can attend, which is great. Participants may ask questions through the online platform, and there will be a Q&A session towards the end of the agenda moderated by Ontario One Call staff. I'll just touch a bit on the voting process. Voting will be done electronic ballot and start after the conclusion of this meeting, so voting will be open until 11 p.m. tonight. Members who were registered in advance have been contacted to determine which individuals will be responsible for casting the members' ballot. Those individuals have already been provided with the appropriate information and instructions. So if you have any questions, though, please reach out by email to Corey Officer at on1call.com. So what will the members be voting on? There's a few items that are up. The appointment of the directors, the appointment of auditors, proposed revisions to the bylaws and the proposed change to fees schedule. For more procedural matters such as accepting minutes and adjournments, the members of the board of of directors will be unmuted for the conference call and will move and second those items. So that everybody can see the agenda items up on the screen. We'll move to the previous minutes as we move through our overall agenda. The minutes of last year's AGM have been circulated, and I will ask that shall the minutes be approved?
It's Wayne here. I'd make a motion to approve the minutes of the 2020 AGM.
And it's Karen Marner, and I second that.
Thank you, Wayne and Karen. Those in favor? Opposed? And then carried. So next item, matters arising. Is there no specific items in the minutes that were to be reported at the last AGM? We'll proceed to the report from the chair. So on behalf of Scott, I'd like to present the report from the chair. So 2020 included a number of important steps taken from Ontario One Call. So at the meeting today, we'll review our progress on those, as well as conduct important governance matters to ensure that Ontario One Call can keep moving forward. Last year, the membership provided significant changes to bylaws, which enhance our governance and establish a new compliance model. We'll continue to work with the Board of Directors and the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services to implement that model during 2021. Ontario One Call has an important relationship with the ministry, as we all know. In 2017, we signed a new memorandum of understanding with the ministry, which outlines our accountabilities through 2022. Recent appointments to the Board of Directors have increased our capabilities in areas of board governance, HR, and legal expertise, something that we're always driving for, ensuring that we have the proper skill matrix and evaluation to continue to strengthen the board. The board will continue to seek candidates who provide the diversity and skills and expertise required to guide our unique organization, such as Ontario One Call. Unique because we really have and are in a place to make changes and really evolve where Ontario One Call is. The board is committed to this central role of Ontario One Call plays in our economy. We all know that it's a huge impact to be able to get locates delivered on time. The construction sector has been busier than ever, as we've seen, even with COVID. We continue to see increases that's surpassed previous years. More importantly than ever, even with COVID, we've been able to maintain uninterrupted service to those who rely on our service to safely complete the important construction work projects that keep the province running. Though we have challenges and we continue to work through those, the Ontario One Call team, the board, and our members continue to drive things in the right direction. We continue to monitor the operational and financial status of the organization, which is so key to our health, and continue to deliver on our important mandate. So there's one goal that we all share, it's a safe Ontario. We want to make the province a place where there's no damages to buried infrastructure, where everybody goes home safe, the public is safe, and that we don't interrupt any of the services that many of our buried infrastructure owners supply today. Such a key part of what we do in Ontario, and together we are working diligently to make this vision a reality. Just want to thank everybody, and I will now pass it over to Ben for a report from the Executive Director.
Great. Thank you very much, Dean, for your comments, and welcome everyone to the 2021 Annual General Meeting of Ontario One Call. I'm just going to take a few minutes to overview some activities over the last year and also looking forward to this year and the future. So just a few numbers to start with. One thing we've talked about over the last several AGMs is the impact of map selection notification. Of course, map selection notification was implemented a number of years ago as a system improvement led by Katie Gottsman and her team to ensure that members received fewer notifications. In the event, it's reduced around 15% of all notifications dispatched to members. And as the volumes of requests have grown, the benefits of MSN has grown as well. We calculate those annualized savings at $10 million a year. And that's just assuming that these notifications were simply cleared through the back office. In reality, some were probably actually located in the field with a truck rolling to do that work. So in a very conservative way, just one program launched by Ontario One Call over the last few years has saved members more than the annual cost of running the system as a whole. And there's a great demonstration about how having a unified one call system is able to drive member efficiencies and member savings. Obviously, the last 2 years have not been business as usual for our province. We've seen in the last 18 months a serious interruption in our lives with the COVID-19 pandemic. At the same time, I think our industry as a whole has risen to the challenge. In fact, we see more construction activity now than ever before. As we look at the first number, -4%, that was the decrease in volume from 2019 to 2020. So even though we had a huge crisis in 2020 with multiple economic shutdowns, the year-over-year volume only was reduced by 4%. There was no COVID crash in construction activity. And that shows the resilience of the industry and also the pent-up demand and funding for major construction projects in the province. And the resilience of the construction industry in the face of such an unprecedented crisis really shows you how buoyant the industry is. And the last number, plus 28%, that's the increase in volume from last year to this year. So from an almost negligible drop during COVID to this year, where hopefully we're progressing through COVID, there has been an enormous increase in volumes. Volumes that are not only above any record, but far above any record volume we have seen before. And certainly a lot of factors are driving that. There's a lot of homeowner activity due to pent-up savings created by the lack of travel and spending opportunities during COVID. But we see it across all sectors. So major contractors, major construction, a huge increase in volumes, well above and beyond anything anyone could have ever imagined. And we only see that trend increasing. We don't anticipate there'll be a big drop next year. As you saw, COVID only created a -4% drop. We expect this growth in work to continue as there's more pent-up demand for economic activity, and as major projects such as the provincial government's recently announced broadband funding starts to come through the system. So we're in record busy times. We only expect that to increase and accelerate. So we're going to spend a few minutes talking about what was accomplished last year. I'm not going to read the whole list out to you. I just want to focus on a few priorities that impact and benefit our membership. The first is the implementation of mandatory DIRT reporting. And it's mandatory only for the top 20 members by number of notifications they receive. The top 20 members do about 2/3 of the work, spread roughly evenly across all our different member sectors. So they're a good representative sample and a critical mass of the notifications and the work happening in Ontario. And we selected them because that's the way to get the most value for the report, while only putting obligations on the top 20 members and not all 800 members. Of course, members outside of that top 20 are welcome to participate, and we're happy to facilitate that in conjunction with the ORCGA. Katie will talk more about the Homeowners single property ticket project that we're doing this year and into next year. Needless to say, we're very excited, and we're very pleased to have a system which we feel more reflects the needs and the use of everyday users and is less of a specialized tool. So one that is easier to use, easier to input information, and will hopefully drive more people to use the web and create more accurate information for members and LSPs. Ian Simpson will also talk about the professional locate administrator course during his presentation. At a high level, PLAC is really about ensuring, again, the quality of information sent to members and excavators. And the more professionalism and training we have amongst people entering tickets into the system, the better the quality of ticket will be for members and LSPs. On the next slide, just from an internal prospect or an internal perspective, we completed our first enterprise risk management study last year, and we're implementing a number of mitigations in areas such as IT security. So we're looking at our own operations to ensure that we're operating in a safe, prudent, and sustainable manner. We're also working on some of the outcomes of the late locate symposium. We're seeing positive progress on things like dedicated locator, including using dedicated locator for projects like SWIFT in southwestern Ontario. We certainly continue to champion dedicated locator and other innovative business approaches that help the industry move forward in ways that are responsive to the need of excavators and the proponents of major projects. Towards the end of 2020, we made major revisions to our bylaws, and that received strong member support. There are a lot of changes, most importantly, a new compliance model that we're in the process of implementing, which is based on mediation and arbitration, and also increased excavator representation on the board of directors. One final item that I want members to keep in mind is that we also passed last year a new performance-based billing model, which will take effect in a couple of years. And even though it's business as usual in terms of our fees and fee schedule changes, we'll talk more next year about how the incentive performance-based model is being calculated and the various types of swings that members will see. But at a high level, we're rewarding members who deliver better than average locate delivery performance and penalizing those who deliver worse than average performance. So we're creating within our regular billing system sticks and carrots to ensure better compliance with the law. So looking forward to 2021, these are the 10 priorities that we've identified for Ontario One Call. First is the implementation of mandatory DIRT reporting. And I know a lot of people on this call have been working with Richard Durer and Brandon Denton to ensure that you're providing information to the DIRT reporting tool. The motivation behind this bylaw change in this program is to give us the best, most accurate, and most complete information possible. We look to the CGA in the United States, where they have a very robust dirt report. And that annual report is filled with detailed information, a lot of actionable guidance that help members in the United States change and improve their damage prevention process. And as we start to implement this mandatory dirt reporting system, we'll start to generate the data and the analysis necessary to help all of us improve our damage prevention game. And that's something very desirable and something we can achieve with minimal impact to the membership. Of course, we're moving forward with a new homeowner ticket, expanding the use of plaque training. Ian will share some of the really exciting numbers we've had in terms of the number of participants and the level of interest. We continue to work with uninterrupted services during the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And also promoting new business approaches like dedicated locator to respond to the needs and the expectations of excavators. We conducted an excavator survey earlier this year that was very helpful in terms of providing guidance to members in Ontario One Call about where excavators were at. For example, excavators gave us good early warning that their expectations were for a very busy construction season, and that helped condition the expectations of members and Ontario One Call as well. That's something we'll repeat in the future because that turned out to be very valuable information, and we'll want to definitely keep our ear to the ground to hear what excavators are saying and how we can be responsive to what they're talking about. Today, we'll add an additional excavator representative to the board of directors. That will take representation up to 3 members of the 16 members of the board of directors. We're also doing work to form a new compliance committee. In fact, we'll be discussing that at the board meeting after this AGM. And we're also going to communicate more to members about the bylaw changes made in 2020. In particular, you can expect to hear more communications to excavators and members and stakeholders around compliance, both the process and the expectations. So a lot of activity for 2021, but all of it are dedicated towards continuing the important journey that we're on towards improving damage prevention. One last slide about the COVID-19 pandemic. We've been in a work from home model since mid-March 2021. I remember it very well. I was actually out of the country when COVID started to impact us. And we did, for me, late night conference calls. Well, it was 9 o'clock in Guelph. And the staff did an incredible job, roughly in that second week of March, quickly moving everyone, disassembling their computers and working from home. And from bedrooms and kitchen tables and corners of living rooms, our staff have been working since mid-March 2020. For people calling into the system, it's like we never left the office. And in fact, a lot of people think we're still in the office as we were designated an essential service. But it's been an extraordinary commitment by our staff to keep working, keep their eye on the ball, and keep normal services operating. A lot of industries have been interrupted, but we're very happy we've been able to provide continuity of service. And considering the demand for our service, that's actually been very important in terms of keeping construction in Ontario moving safely and reliably. Employee safety is our paramount concern. Even within our office, a small number of people here, we've done a lot to increase sanitation, physical spacing, and also things like hand-free door openers. So in conjunction with the requirements of our local public health unit, we've been very mindful about fully implementing and following the rules, guidelines, and laws for safe office use, and same with our office in Sudbury as well. Before I pass it on to Karen for the report from the treasurer, I will talk later on in this presentation about the fee schedule increase and also changes to the bylaws, which are 2 of the items that members will be voting on. You will have received the ballot very recently from Corey Officer. So we'll talk about those 2 items towards the end of today's agenda. And with that, I'll pass it over to Karen for the report from the treasurer.
Thanks, Ben. Ontario One Call remains in a strong and stable financial position. Revenues were on target at $8.9 million in 2020. This is due to the fact that the assessment model is fixed, as was previously approved by the membership. This model has been vital in ensuring the financial stability of the organization throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Our total expenses decreased in 2020 to $9 million from $9.2 million in 2019. Again, this is primarily due to cost mitigations that were implemented as part of the organization's pandemic response. Cash at the year end, cash and cash equivalents are at $3.5 million as of the end of 2020. The board has approved that this amount can move to $3 million in future years to allow for future system investments and to mitigate the impact of any fee increases on the membership. In spite of the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on our province, the financial outlook for Ontario One Call continues to be stable. The board will continue to evaluate opportunities to manage its costs while investing in more areas such as compliance and IT security. Next, for item 6.0, members are asked to approve the Donna A. Goldstein Chartered Accountant Professional Corporation as the Ontario One Call Independent Auditor for 2021 to 2022. Members will be asked to vote electronically at the end of the meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to Dean for the election of the new slate of Board of Directors.
So let's flip the slide. All right, there it is. The process to select members of the Board of Directors is described in the Ontario One Call bylaw. So number 2, Article 12. As required, the Governance and Nominations Committee has received nominations for the open board positions and have prepared the following slate of directors. So please vote electronically at the end of the meeting. As you can see, again, there's the list of election of directors, and get your vote in. With that, I will now pass it over to the Operations Committee. Bav, over to you.
And just before we get to BAF, sorry to interrupt, we also have a slide up here that explains how participants can enter questions for the Q&A session we'll have afterwards, after the presentations.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Ben.
Good morning, members, excavators, LSPs, and other stakeholders. My name is Bath Mystery. I'm the chair of the Ontario One Call Operations Committee, and it's my pleasure to provide an update on the committee's activities in 2020. So first, I'd like to introduce the committee. So next slide, please, Corey. Thank you. So this is our committee members and the sectors that they represent. I also wanted to point out Nectar Tampakopoulos, who is our vice chair. And also our newest member is Josie Trapani from ProMark, who replaced Jason Henderson earlier this year. So a big thank you to Jason for his work with the committee over the last couple of years. So these are your sector reps, and I do encourage you to reach out to them for any concerns or issues that you have and any suggestions that you would have to help make the system better, the process better for all of us. Next slide, Corey. So next I'll provide some highlights on the committee's accomplishments in 2020. So the focus for the year was really on implementing recommendations that came out of the Late Locate Symposium that Ben had mentioned, as well as work on the bylaws and the fee structure, and work really in preparation for some of the changes that Katie Gottsman will be speaking about regarding a web portal enhancement. So first off, regarding the bylaw amendments, the committee reviewed the proposed bylaw changes in detail and provided a written response. And so generally we agreed in principle, to the modernization of the language, though the committee did feel that more work is needed to enhance the bylaws to hold both members and excavators accountable. such as by outlining excavator requirements and what defines a valid locate request. And the committee further indicated that we need to provide more clarity on the compliance committee and process, on mediation, arbitration, and the appeals process, and also to consider other avenues that are available to the provincial agencies that may result in faster and less costly appeals process. So that's a bit of a highlight on the committee's response to the bylaw amendments. Regarding the late locate symposium, we actually had 4 members that attended the symposium and brought back some takeaways for the committee, including providing input and communication on sharing locates. Another item that was raised that the committee looked at was on locate validity. And while we recognize that we can't mandate members to set a specific period, such as 60 days, we can certainly continue to advocate and educate. And so that will be the focus for us in the coming months, is really an outreach to members who are not on 60 days to talk about what the benefits are for them and what the benefits would be for excavators. So we recognize that a small change such as this can have quite an impact. So the committee also has spent a lot of hours working on work type and really refining the list of work types in an effort to simplify the list. We've been working with Ontario One Call on reducing a list that's hundreds long down to something less than 100. Our hope is that it'll make it easier for requesters when they're submitting tickets, as well as making it easier for members who use work type to manage filters. The next item I'll touch on is around defining a project, and the committee continues to work on this definition because it's an important component on the new web portal that Katie will speak to. And what we're really looking at here is trying to determine what data should be captured based on the type of request. And so with the current limitations of the system and technology, and limited flexibility, it's been a bit of a challenge to come up with a definition that really works in both the rural and urban environment. And so we continue to have discussions around, a definition of project, and our expectation is that we will land on something that we can all agree with. Next, I'll just touch on the fee schedule proposal that Ben mentioned, and the committee did review the model that was proposed and looked at the impact on billing based on a sample data set that was provided by Ontario One Call. And so in review, we did make a number of recommendations and we implemented, that were implemented to take a more broader view of the data that's included in the calculations. And I believe Ben will talk further around how that calculation happens. And so by doing so, it does encourage members to improve their systems and improve mapping, and also to leverage other tools such as alternate locate agreements and using filters. And so overall, the committee felt that the model is fair, it's reasonable, and ultimately drives the right member behavior. And I'll touch last on communication. So last year, the committee placed great emphasis on improving communication to members and stakeholders. And so a number of communications were issued in collaboration with Ontario One Call on key messages such as sharing locates, locate validity periods, using dedicated locator model, to name a few. So it's important, and the committee feels it's really critical to get the messages out to the right people. And we do feel that there's more work that we need to do in this area. And so you'll see messaging come from the committee on specific items that will be a little bit more targeted. So that's 2020 in a nutshell. In 2021, the committee spent considerable time supporting the development of the new web portal, which Katie will be speaking to. And so really looking forward for the rest of the year and into 2022, the committee is really keen to drive some real change and improvements for stakeholders. as we deal with what could be our most challenging year yet as an industry. Ben talked about volumes increasing at unprecedented levels. And so we know we have our work cut out for us. And so I'll just end on, if we work together and truly understand the problems and the challenges, I think we can, through collaboration, define workable solutions that support our goal for a safe Ontario. Thank you for your time, and I'll now pass it over to Katie Gottsman, Director of Operations, to provide her update.
Thank you, Beth. Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Gottsman. I'm the Director of Operations for Ontario One Call. Today, I'll update you on some system changes. Next slide. So we'll start with changes from the past, one we've called map selection notification, and Ben mentioned this earlier in his presentation. So this system allows the map selection drawn within the web portal to overlap with members' infrastructure in the back-end system. The system then generates a notification to any overlapping members by that map selection. Therefore, what this means is that the better defined the mapping by members within our back-end system, and the better drawn the map selection within our web portal, the better the opportunity for the notification to be reduced and reduce the number of members on that locate request. So the outcome for 2020 was that we saw a continued decrease in the members per locate request, down to 5.87 members from 6.04 in 2019. And in 2021, we continued to see an average of 0.3 reduction in members per locate request. I'd like to also remind everyone that before this system was implemented in December 2017, Ontario One Call saw up to 8 members per locate request in some instances. So we have begun a communication with members to show the benefits of reducing the coverage within the system. Next slide, please. I'd like to share with you some of those benefits now. So reducing your coverage within our system has the opportunity to reduce both the administrative and locate costs, as you do not have to action requests where your infrastructure is not affected. We know that many members provide clearances from back office work or by rolling a truck to check the area. This may also help with locate timeliness, as locators can manage their resources, and it creates an opportunity for a more effective process and improved communication between the locator and the excavator. If you are interested in this as a member, please contact us at memberservices@ontarioonecall.ca. Next slide, please. So looking forward to the future, this has been mentioned a couple of times in this presentation, but we're changing the way that our web portal will be functioning and the format of it. So this is a major rehaul to our web portal where you manage and submit locate requests. Some of the highlights for this include a user-friendly format and process. We will have new and improved mapping features. There will be an easy-to-submit design and planning request. The search criteria will be customizable per user, and the system will be mobile-friendly, though we do suggest following the best practices and using a 7-inch screen or greater for best results. Next slide, please. Here you see our login screen. You can right away see that the process of selecting a user type is much easier. If you're a contractor, once you've logged in, you'll have the opportunity to create a single address request, an advanced request, a design and planning request, and the overall system will be easier for you to use and manage your requests as well as your account settings. Homeowners will have the opportunity to create single address requests, and again, easier process overall for request submission and searching. Members will retain their notification management system in a new format and look, and they will also have access to the search criteria and customization. So diving a little bit deeper into the single address versus advanced address request. On the single address request, there will be fewer questions. We only accept single civics on this request, which is typical for private properties or small-sized excavations specific to registered lots. These requests will be suspended if they do not meet this criteria, as the purpose of these requests is to make the process simpler and faster for smaller excavation areas. On the advanced request, There will be a few additional questions, including the permit number, a project number if one is available. This is for the excavators to be able to manage their project overall, and an expected end date of the excavation. I know that this could be a moving target. Delays occur for many reasons. However, what we're looking for is at the time that you produce your locate request, you let us know what your expected end date of that excavation is. This will help the locators understand the parameters of your work and help work with you within your timeline. On this request, you're not required to submit a civic, or you may add multiple civics. This is typical for larger excavations with larger properties or extended life, such as road construction. Next slide, please. Another change to the form will be a friendlier interaction with our map. You will be able to type in your address right into the map instead of ahead of the map, including the intersecting streets. Those will now generally be completed for you by the system, unless, of course, we can't locate you based on the map selection. Then you might need to confirm a little bit of extra information. The measuring tool will also be improved. It will allow you to bend corners and measure the entire site. And the drawing tools will be modified and simplified for the mobile devices. But again, using a 7-inch screen is the recommended size. Next, please. The form will also change, moving away from cumbersome labels and checkboxes in the dig information section to easy to understand questions with helpful hints. This is to ensure that the information we receive is consistent across all users and to make the form simpler for new users and homeowners in order to simplify the whole process for them from beginning to end. Next slide. And we've added more space for the additional information section by combining the detailed description of the work and the remarks section and adding extra characters. We've provided you more locate instruction space and to let the locators know about your dig in more detail. Next slide. As I've mentioned already, once the system is implemented, you will see new search layouts and options, as well as new account settings and options where you'll be able to manage your contractor IDs and your personal profiles. Next slide. One important change to note is that with all of the changes occurring for the new web portal, the changes to the label names and their placement, in the confirmations and notifications that will be sent, these changes will be occurring as well. That means that any member who parses their notification or any contractor who parses their confirmation will have to make technical changes on their end. As we've been communicating about this change since January of this year, you can find information at ontarioonecall.ca/news. Look for the article that says New Web Portal, and there you'll find instructions on how to deal with the changes, as well as instructions on how to reach us if you need any help. Next slide, please. For this project, we also had some beta testing opportunities. One beta testing has actually been completed already earlier this year from March to April 2021. We had close to 30 participants over the 5 weeks, and we were able to get perspective on how the users would work within the system. We did receive a lot of good feedback on the changes, as well as some opportunities for further improvement. We'll also be holding a beta testing for members to test the notifications. As I've mentioned, those will be changing. So for anyone who parses their notifications, for members, specifically, please look out for communication in July 2021 in order to be able to register for this beta. Next slide, please. As mentioned by Bav, a couple of additional future changes that we're working on with the Operations Committee include the types of work. Types of work are very many in our system. We have close to 300, and we are looking to streamline this as many of them are duplicates or go unused. We want to simplify the process in whole for both the contractors and homeowners. So we're looking to reduce and make the answers more consistent for all users. We're also looking to define a project work. By taking the various fields within the locate request and seeing how they could help the system automatically decipher between the difference between a project and a standard request coming into the system, which will help both locators and contractors to manage the locate work and volumes. Thank you very much for your time today. That's it for me, and I will now pass it to Ian Simpson for the update on marketing programs.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. That was great. Hello, everyone. My name is Ian Simpson, and I am the Director of Education, Marketing, and Compliance. And I'm going to give you updates on each one of these, everything from marketing, compliance, and education. I'll start off with our marketing. Just to talk about marketing programs, just in general, for anyone tackling marketing messages, especially safety messages today, it's a cluttered world out there. People are bombarded with marketing messages all the time, and it's really hard to get your message through to people when they need it. Ontario One Call has a goal here for our marketing programs to create visually striking materials that get people to pause. And if we can get them to pause, they will take a deeper look, because we need to get people to take action on our brand. And if we get them to pause, then they're more likely to create action. If you go to the next slide there, in 2020, Ontario One Call launched a campaign called the Get the Dirt campaign. This Get the Dirt campaign was a homeowner-centric campaign that played off the need for people to get the information they need to dig safe. It was a campaign that was a targeted approach designed to catch specific markets when people were wanting to perform different types of digs. If you go to the next slide there, in 2021, with the success of 2020, we've actually expanded this program. This targeted approach really works. And we've actually created more homeowner work types that we are going after, as well as contractor work types. Each piece of creative that we have created is used in targeted ways to make an impact based on what people are looking for. And our digital strategy, which is what we're using the most right now since COVID has come around, is to catch people at the right place, at the right time, with the right message. And we use a lot of digital tactics such as targeted ads, remarketing, and advanced search engine optimization. Here's some examples of some of the digital ads and techniques that we use. Our creative is resonating with audiences. We have an extremely high engagement level on social. We are generating thousands of interactions with our brand. Our display ads that we have out there are getting 2 times the industry average for click-through rates. And our remarketing campaigns are getting extremely high website conversion rates. Conversion rates means people coming and actually requesting locates. And I'm very happy to announce that the Get the Dirt campaign is getting noticed. If you go to the next slide there, with our marketing agency At Home Creative, Ontario One Call in 2020 has won 2 marketing and communication awards. The first award we won was a gold award for best design. And that's what I was talking about before, creating visually striking ads. And that was won at the International Davy Award. And the second award that we won was a communicator award. And we won the highest award you could win at the Communicator Award, which was the Award of Excellence for Integrated Campaign. This is awarded to marketing campaigns that make an impact, a communication impact on their target audience. So Get the Dirt campaign is working. If you just go to the next slide there. Our award-winning campaign material is available to all stakeholders. So if you want to use any of our materials at any time, it's available on our website in our marketing and education toolkit. We launched this toolkit in 2019, and it continues to be a great resource to help spread safety, Dig Safe Month, safe digging, call or click before you dig, and call before you clear messaging. Our members and stakeholders are downloading this materials at record levels right now. And it really helps our brand and the safety message that we're trying to bring out here for a safe Ontario to have a more cohesive messaging across the province. Due to COVID-19, our marketing budget was limited. But with the help of you, our members and stakeholders, our reach is massive. This marketing and education toolkit is updated regularly and includes everything from posters to bill inserts to equipment and vehicle stickers to videos to social media graphics and so much more. On the next slide here, you can see we actually got together with a joint utility group this year to put more emphasis on sewer safety inspection and the safety around that. And we launched a new campaign this year called Call Before You Clear. It's always been around, but these are the materials that we created. This is now available for everyone to have, as well as there's some materials in here to help with the professional locate administrator course. A sneak peek ahead of 2021. You can see what's happening. Go to the next slide there. We are partnering with our influencer. Kate Campbell, I'm happy to announce, has joined the Ontario One Call team. She is a star from HDTV. She is known in shows like Deck Wars, Disaster Decks, Homes on Home, Home to Win, Canadian Handyman, Home Inspection, and so many more HDTV shows. She is helping to push our message through social channels, through the media, and she's lending her image so that we can use it in a lot of our retail kits that we have at nurseries throughout the province. We are so excited to have Kate Campbell join us for 2021, and our marketing success for 2021 will in no doubt be helped by Kate Campbell joining us for the Get the Dirt campaign. Go to the next slide there. And that is our update for marketing. I'm also going to do an update on compliance as well. So in compliance in 2020, so I'll focus on 2020 results in this report. Corey, if you just go to the next slide there. So here is a chart system that shows what kind of complaints or the amount of complaints that we had in 2020. In 2020, we had 441 member-driven complaints. Those are people who are trying to dig, who want to send out complaints to members, and we had 4 complaints against excavators. This was a record low in the number of complaints that Ontario One Call received. It was actually a drop in 76% compared to 2019. Just as an example, formal complaints being at 445 in 2020. In 2019, it was over 1,800. Now, formal complaints are only one aspect of compliance. There is other things that compliance does, and many excavators also prefer to send out informal complaints rather than send out formal complaints. And our informal complaints are usually double the amount of what we received from formal complaints. Overall, in 2020, there was a decrease of approximately 65% in all compliance activities compared to 2019. You go to the next slide there. This gives you an overview, this chart here, of how the complaints that we received, the formal complaints, were broken down by the types of complaints. Late locates, as is pretty much for every single year, was the #1 complaint. There is a delineation here between valid total and invalid total. Valid total means it was actually an infraction. It was actually within our act to file the complaint, and an invalid means it was beyond our act. So they weren't actually offending in that regard. So late locates is #1, and always false renegotiated date. That's when a member or an LSP puts in a renegotiated date into our system where an excavator has not agreed to. An excavator always has to agree to a renegotiated date in order for it to put into the 360 system, because that changes the legal due date. If you go to the next slide there. Here's a breakdown geographically, and what we threw in here geographically of areas was the different years and the different geographic areas. In 2019, we highlighted that Hamilton Niagara became the #1 hotspot. And that was the first time that a region outside of Toronto had more complaints against it. We are happy to say that in 2020, Hamilton Niagara dropped dramatically. It no longer was the number one hotspot for complaints. Locates were getting done in a more compliant level. Toronto did become the number one complaint hub again, for taking its number one spot as it did in 2016, 17, and 18. But the numbers were dramatically lower from what it was in 2019. Across the board, just a lot less complaints in 2019 or 2020. And the next slide there. This chart just shows year-over-year comparison of the volume of complaints. As you can see, we always spike nearing the end of the year, but complaints about this time of year are really going crazy. In any year, it doesn't matter what year it is. But overall, as in most years, late locates is the most frequent complaint. The significant drop in complaints in 2020 can be summed up that a lot of projects might have been pushed into 2021 or 2022 due to COVID. There's also lockdowns and the essential service list, so projects were put off. On top of that, in 2020, we saw a lot more members utilize the solutions that were presented in 2019 for the Late Locate Symposium. There was an increase in members changing their validity to 60 days or more. They do this so that they aren't notified for relocates, and it really helps the system go forward. Also, a lot of major excavations and excavators out there were starting to utilize or inquire about dedicated and self-locating solutions, which we like to push as well. And there were more excavators sharing locates. A lot of the efforts that the operations committee put forward with these were gaining results and traction. And that's the update for Compliance 2020. I'll go into education and training. Education and training in 2020 had an exceptionally successful year. Our dedicated team of trainers and educators worked really hard and diligently through COVID to help train members and excavators on their responsibilities within our Act, as well as how to use our system better. And our biggest success story overall is the launch of the Professional Locate Administrator course. We call it PLAC. So PLAC, which was launched in October of last year, so 2020, has had hundreds of people register for the course every single month. This course is a fully interactive online course designed to create expert locate administrators. It provides an in-depth understanding of the steps necessary to effectively manage locates within the province of Ontario. To date, we have had well over 500 graduates, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people in there in the system right now being educated, and more graduates will come soon. Benefits here, if you just click that one more time. Why are we offering this course? I'll tell you why we're offering this course. We're offering this course simply to make this course make better quality tickets. And the better the locate request, the more efficient the system. Up until this point, there was no industry-wide training program to create an effective user of Ontario One Call. Anyone at any time could request a locate without any training and without any knowledge of the system or how it worked. This course changed everything. Anyone who takes this course becomes an expert. Certificate holders, people who actually gain the certificate, have a new designation, they improve their skills, and they offer increased value to the company they work for. And the company can be confident that the tickets that are going into the system are the best quality tickets that can go in. For members, you can be confident that users, graduates of this program, understand the rules. They do provide exceptional tickets, and they will eliminate system misuses which can slow down locate delivery. This course is also Gold Seal accredited, so any learner can have 1 credit towards Gold Seal certification with the Canadian Construction Association. And if you go to the next slide, our students are telling us that this course is working. In a survey that we ran at the end of last year all the way to March of this year, respondents have told us that they feel like experts. 95% of our graduates are telling us they feel like an expert or could apply the majority of the concepts that were learned. 92% describe the course as having excellent content or very good content. And when asked if they would recommend this course to anyone in the industry, 82% said without a doubt they would recommend this course. We are getting tremendously great feedback on this course. If you go to the next slide there, our goal with PLAC is to one day have the majority of locate administrators in Ontario take this course. Our education and training department is continually improving this course from the feedback that we receive from anyone who has graduated from the course. We are also researching and developing new courses to meet the demands of the industry. So just be on the lookout. We are creating more courses, we're thinking about more courses, and they could be coming out in the next few years. If you know someone who would benefit from the Professional Locate Administrator course, please have them reach out to our training department or just go to our website and click on the PLAC button to learn more information. And that is it for my updates. So I'm going to pass this back over to Ben and Dean to talk about the fee schedule.
Thanks, Ian. I'll be reviewing the fee schedule item and also the bylaw proposal. These are 2 of the items you'll be voting on today for the members with ballots, in addition to the board of directors and approval of the auditor. Just a couple notes on the fee schedule change. It really has a couple different parts. There's a request for a 2.9% base fee increase. In addition to that, an additional $500,000 to take the compliance budget from $100,000 to $600,000. There are also some associated minor changes in what are discretionary fees, so hourly fees that members pay outside of their normal membership activity for certain services like lookup and additional reporting services. There's a couple things that are behind the proposed fee schedule change. The most important, obviously, is the establishment of specific funding for the new compliance model. Obviously, we have staff on hand that do work with compliance, that receive and process complaints. These are already covered by the fees members pay currently. However, the new model, which focuses on mediation and arbitration, has additional and new costs associated with it. Most specifically, the cost of the actual mediation and arbitration itself. Ontario One Call is going to bear those costs. It's not going to be cost shared with members. There's not going to be a decision at the end that assigns costs to one party or the other. One Call is paying these fees. So the mediators and arbitrators work on an hourly basis, on a fee-for-service basis. So there does need to be some funding put towards that, and that is what is proposed here. Some people on the board suggested there might be higher numbers required in future years. That might be the case, but we're confident in that the funding that is proposed here will be sufficient for our needs in 2022. Additional items as well worth discussing. As Katie was talking about, a lot more of our traffic is being driven towards the web. With that comes additional costs. Our web platform, the mapping service, has a per usage cost that we pay. And even just simple things like the amount of people calling in being put on hold, that adds additional costs to our telecommunication fees. So as we expand the use of the online tool, those associated costs rise, as well as normal inflationary costs for compensation and services received by One Call. The next slide talks about Prudence and financial management and efficiency. And I believe that these are important things to continually demonstrate to the members, but also to stakeholders and to the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services to demonstrate prudence with member money. And even though members vote on these changes, in some entities they don't get to vote on the fees they're charged, this is something that I still think is an incumbent on an organization like us to demonstrate to members. From a historic basis, the annual average change has been less than 1% a year. We've been very prudent in keeping our costs low and ensuring that we ask for money when it's required. So we haven't tried to build up large surpluses in the organization. Some of you may remember several years ago, we gave back around $2 million to members out of our large surplus. We've been very mindful about not asking more from members than we genuinely need. So we want our members to have confidence that when we ask you for more money, it's done out of genuine need and not a desire to build up revenues and surpluses. As Karen mentioned, the board has a reserve target of $3 million of current assets. And I think at this moment, we're around 3.4 million. So we have a reserve fund. We're very prudent in managing that as well. And also as a measure of efficiency, the costs per ticket are down 18% since 2015. And that's something we're very proud of. Driving a lot of our traffic to the web has helped with that, but we're also very mindful about how we schedule staff and ensuring that we maximize the impact of our staffing model as well as the system changes we make. So these slides are meant to demonstrate the prudence and respect that we demonstrate towards members' money. And that's why we're asking for your support on the fee schedule change today. On the last slide, I just want to spend a couple minutes talking about the bylaw change. The bylaw change in itself is very minor, but I'll give you some of the background. Earlier this year, the Ontario legislature passed Bill 257, which is the Building Broadband Faster Act. And in their recent budget, Finance Minister Peter Bethlen-Falvey announced several $1 billion of funding for expanded broadband projects, mostly in rural and semi-rural areas. There's going to be an enormous amount of work associated with these projects, and we've been working with Infrastructure Ontario towards that end. So for the members on this phone call, you can expect to be approached by IO or their contractors if you're in one of those rural or semi-rural areas that are likely to have broadband projects targeted. And we certainly encourage you to engage with Infrastructure Ontario just because their needs are significant, their contractors' needs are significant, and the earlier those discussions and information sharing happens, the better planning there will be and the better prepared you will be for meeting what the contractors need to install this important broadband infrastructure. With Bill 257, there are a couple of changes to our bylaws that must take place. They're very simple and basic. Bill 257 created an absolute deadline of 10 business days for projects that are designated under this act. That's different than the current standard of reasonable attempts within 5 business days. So it's a slightly longer time frame, but there's no flexibility with it. And Bill 257 also has very punitive measures that can be applied to members who do not provide the locates within 10 business days. So there's a very hard limit in Bill 257. There's a lot more accountability to members for those designated broadband projects. So members need to be mindful of that as well. The bylaw change very simply just references the fact that Bill 257 has this language in it. Beyond that, it doesn't do anything controversial or remarkable. So we urge your support for that bylaw change as well. With that bylaw being changed, we would then go to the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. And they would start the work in getting our new regulation passed by the Ontario Cabinet. So that new regulation would give Schedule 2 of Bylaw 2 the force of law and would really allow us to start to implement the bylaw changes made late last year to compliance. So approving the bylaw change today allows us to move forward with our compliance model and all the good things that should flow from that. So we urge you both to vote yes on the fee schedule change and yes to the bylaw change. So with that, we're going to have a question and answer segment that I'll take care of, and maybe some other people will chime in as well. Corey's put up this on the screen where you can pose questions on the platform. In normal times, what we would do is we would have it in person. We'd have a full hour-long bear pit session. What we'll do here, we have a much briefer session, and Adam and Ryan from Ontario One Call are going to moderate it. So please type in your questions, and I'll ask Ryan and Adam to pose your questions in no particular order.
Thank you, Ben. The first question has a bit of a statement and then a question at the end. And it goes, in my sector, my locate delivery is guided by the Ontario Energy Board. The OEB uses a cost of service process to set the hydro rates, and that is typically a multi-year forward-looking window. In short, we cannot accept higher variability in year-to-year cost changes that include the one call assessment. Compliance is another similar problem. I am driven by the OEB compliance standards and have staffed accordingly. Again, my budget does not allow for taking on or discarding of bodies and meets unpredictable one call compliance standards and the associated costs. The current request for an 8% increase in the one call budget for 2022 is not acceptable in his opinion. The question, how does one call take into account the members and ultimately the residents of Ontario and their ability to carry these costs?
So thanks very much for that question. One reason that we put those two charts up that sort of show the cost year over year is because a lot of our members are regulated utilities. Many are municipalities. They generally work on a 1% or 2% or inflationary basis increase. What I can tell you is that over a period of several years, our average increase has been less than 1%. So when you look at the historical context, you can say that Ontario One Call's cost increases has typically been less than the rate of inflation and less than the rate of other services you pay for. So on a multi-year basis, there's a very good story to tell about One Call delivering fee increases well under inflation. We're also mindful too that One Call services tend to make a very small portion of a member's locate delivery budget. I know some members might spend $200,000 a year on Ontario One Call fees. They might spend $8 million a year on locate. So we're very respectful with members' money, but we also recognize that it's a very small portion of their locates budget. And we also understand too that the money spent on Ontario One Call is very effective. So when you look at something like map selection notification, that costs us around $1 million one-time costs, but it saves members $10 million a year. So to that person, I can say we have a long-term history of financial responsibility, of delivering rates lower than the rate of inflation or the regulatory rate you might be allowed through the OEB, and that the money you spend on Ontario One Call is very prudently spent in ways that reduce members' costs. And to the broader question too, which a lot of members ask, which is about we have fixed costs, we have fixed staffing, and then services, the request goes up 28% a year. That's really the nature of the business. And I think a lot of members are changing their thinking and becoming open to new ideas about how to manage these costs. I grew up in the utility sector. All of us grew up with utilities or municipalities or in the construction industry. And we grew up in a world where it was taken for granted that, members pay for locates and that's a cost and we bear 100% of that. Is that really the best model going forward? Should there be different ways about thinking about how services are delivered? There definitely should be. Should there be different ways of thinking about how costs are shared or apportioned? It's important to remember that nothing in Ontario law or One Call bylaws says that the member must pay for everything and do it this certain way. members have a lot of flexibility in how they provide their services and how or if they charge for their services. And excavators should also feel free to suggest new delivery models as well. We need a lot more thinking to address and overcome the challenges that the questioner has identified.
Next question I have here. Excavations without locate number seems low. Is this a condition of non-reporting? Oil and gas do have other reporting requirements, regulations for non-compliance, such as TSSA, CER. Should these activities be reported to Ontario One Call? Organizations such as CEPA show much higher numbers of unauthorized ground disturbance involving no locates applied for or on site for excavation activities. Does Ontario One Call communicate with other organizations such as CEPA?
I don't know if we communicate with CEPA, which is a pipelines authority. There are a couple of things on that. So when we learn of instances of excavators digging without locates, we typically communicate that to the TSSA and or the Ministry of Labor. They'll actually send an inspector, they'll roll a truck, and they'll deal with that situation directly. To get a better sense on questions like excavations without locates or damages caused by failure to cause a locate, that's an area where there's somewhat of an information gap. And the reason there's an information gap is that the use of the dirt tool provided by the ORCGA is a bit hit and miss. A lot of large members are in it, a lot of large members are outside of it. So what we did to get better information about things like people who dig without locates and how that's a root cause of damages, having mandatory dirt reporting should help with that. So this is the first year of mandatory dirt reporting. The top 20 members are participating and hopefully additional ones as well. That should create a lot better information about things like excavation without locates, give us a better handle on how widespread and frequently occurring it is. And if it is an area that is of particular concern, One Call and the industry and regulators can develop specific strategies to deal with that. So I think a more robust and complete dirt report will help with that and associated challenges.
Thank you. And our next question is about compliance, and it says the complaints data is misleading, as most companies have come to realize the futility of complaining. Excavators only want predictable locate delivery timelines, nothing else. What is being done to make the delivery of utility locates more predictable and more in line with the legislated 5-day requirement? The late locates issue is growing every year, not shrinking. Will One Call commit to tracking more pointed data, i.e. locate request dates versus delivery dates, late deliveries of locates on single home addresses versus construction projects, etc.?
That's a great question, and one that I think probably touches on a lot of concerns excavators on this call have. First off, the individual complaints we receive are actually really important and valuable. They are tracked, and that is shared with the ministry and the board of directors. So please don't know that when you file a complaint that it is being looked at by people up the food chain and senior decision makers as well. So I would never say it's futile in that sense. I would also say that it's also beneficial in terms of what our staff do at One Call, Rob Matthews and Sarah Burke and everyone else dealing with compliance, to address those concerns and address hotspots. And certainly them and Ian Simpson have addressed a lot of the hotspot areas such as Hamilton, Niagara. So complaining does have benefits, and we do look at that information very carefully and act upon it. You are right in saying that there are widespread challenges. We've actually produced some new reporting just in the last month or two that we'll share with the board of directors after this meeting, and also share with MGCS, which is how do locates look like from the excavator's point of view. One weakness now is that we tend to measure locates from when the excavator provides it. We don't often think about how the excavator receives them. There's no point in providing 4 locates within 5 business days if there's a 5th locate that's 2 months late. that's in fact the worst outcome because those other 4 locates will expire. So we have developed new reporting that looks at things from the excavator's point of view. And as we roll that out, that'll be much more illuminating and informative to all industry participants as well.
Quick question here. The proposed phone notifications, meaning emergencies, has more than doubled. Why so much?
To be frank, that's something I've looked at, and that's been one of my big focuses as executive director. When I came on in 2014, I think we had around 50,000 emergency requests a year, and people were using that basically just as a way of getting their locates faster. They weren't for genuine emergencies. Over the years, we whittled that number down to about 30,000 a year. So that's about a 40% reduction. So we were getting to a point where it was pretty much genuine emergencies that required a response within 2 hours. We also introduced P0 locates, which helped move some of those emergency requests that should be done within 2 hours to something less urgent. So P0 was meant for 24 hours or as soon as possible. So we did a lot of good work to manage and improve that situation. What we've seen, and this is from the Ontario-wide level, is emergency requests have gone up about 20% this year. And what I believe that to be driven by is simply the late locate challenges. People didn't plan for a 28% increase in volume. People are frustrated that their locates are late, so they call in an emergency. They provide information that is not necessarily genuine or accurate, but they're motivated to do so just because of the challenges of late locates and the urgency and costs that they face because they can't get their locates on time and start and complete their work on time. It becomes a vicious cycle, really, is that excavators are abusing emergency locates, but that's also driven by the lack of the capacity of members to deliver them on time. So you see how it becomes an unvirtuous cycle. On our part, we're certainly ensuring that all emergency requests we get, we're doing the best of our ability to ensure that there are genuine emergencies.
Thank you for that. Does Ontario One Call have a work type created for the requester member LSP to quickly identify the locate request for the upcoming broadband projects? And do we have a list of names of who are participating with the broadband projects?
So yes, we will have a specific work type that is only going to be used for the designated projects under the Act. Not all broadband projects fall under this designation. They're very specific projects in very specific areas with very specific contractors. Infrastructure Ontario, for their part, I'm sure would be happy to share a list of project proponents and geographic areas. They're quite eager to share information, and whatever they can provide that will help members, I'm sure they'll be very happy to do so.
With regards to fees, what will the percentage increase be in 2022 for a typical member monthly/annually invoice?
I think it's roughly around, off the top of my head, I think it's around 8%, because it's roughly going from 9.1 million to 9.8 million. Generally speaking, if you think of the average Ontario One Call member, roughly 500 of our 800 members are too small to actually pay into the fee. They have less than 500 notifications a year. So the average member of Ontario One Call actually doesn't pay into the system. It would actually be more expensive to send them bills than the amount they would actually pay into us. But most members, other than the very large members, the very largest member, I think we have one member that might pay $1 million a year, and we have a couple more that pay, you know, 500,000 or 200,000. But for the overwhelming number of members, this amounts to an increase of $100 or a couple $100 a year. This is not a big item in terms of the bottom line. Of course, we should look at every line item seriously, but for the overwhelming majority of members, this is a very small quantum of money.
Okay, and our last question for today, and I believe we touched on it earlier, but have you considered training for members, contractors that will ensure that they all place similar requests or requests in the same way? Often delays happen because of miscommunications in the limits of locates. It would be ideal to have a standard set for everyone.
It's a great question, and definitely you heard Ian talk a lot about the professional locate administrator course. One of the things that really struck me when I started Ontario One Call was that literally anyone can get online and enter a request in whatever eclectic way they want to. That's not really the best way to do it. So we formed and created the plaque course to ensure that the largest and most regular system users could be certified and qualified, and also do things in a much more standard way. And that's one of our big successes over the last couple of years. We've really made it easier and more uniform in terms of the product the members get. So we're training excavators and system users in the same way, with the same language, promoting the same practices and habits. We also changed our system to ensure that as well. So many years ago, we worked on segment notification and excavations were very large. Now we work off maps and areas are much more carefully and closely defined. So yes, we are doing a lot of work to standardize how people enter data. We're doing that through our training, and we're also doing that through how our system is set up and how our system looks. And we'll continue to do that because we know it'll drive a better and more standardized product. Maybe one last question before we move on.
Sure. We also have one about where can a member or excavator go to find definitions regarding various states used in by Ontario One Call and how they relate to each other.
So we have a glossary on our website that'll help you with some of the terms and terminology. And one thing more generally that I always encourage anyone to do, if you're an excavator, if you're a member, if you're a frontline worker or you're someone in the office, is to go through our website and go through our bylaws, go through Bill 8 itself. Bill 8 is only 5 pages long. There's a lot of important terms and definitions and concepts that are often mistaken, but are really clearly spelled out in the law. So I always want to encourage people to go through that and learn more about the legislative and regulatory framework around One Call. And if you're someone who comes up with a lot of questions, if you're someone who wants to learn more about the system, I really would recommend the Professional Locate Administrator course. Even if you're not entering tickets directly, maybe you have staff who do that, you would still learn a lot about the terminology and also the practices and expectations that members and LSPs have. You'll learn a lot more about how other people in the system are working and what they're needing in their day-to-day jobs. So these are some great questions. I enjoyed answering them, and certainly feel free to keep the dialogue going. We get questions like this every day through email, through telephone conversations, whether you're dealing with compliance or member services or me and my team directly. We're happy for tough questions. We want to get feedback, whether it's anecdotal or some systematic things you see. We're all ears. And we certainly welcome this kind of discussion and dialogue. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Dean for the last few agenda items, which are any other business and the formal adjournment of the AGM.
Thank you, Ben. So some great questions. Thanks, Ben, for going through that with everybody. And if there's more questions that haven't been answered or we've run out of time, please forward those as required. Ben would be more than happy to get back to you. So any other business? So we'll start off on that. So for those of you casting ballots for your respective member, you'll have received a link to vote electronically. So you can start voting immediately. Voting will be open at up to 11 p.m. tonight. So if you have any questions, again, like I stated earlier on voting, please contact Corey Officer at cofficer@on1call.com. I think that is it for other business, and we are moving to the formal adjournment. I'd like to thank everyone for their participation today. This is obviously the last two AGMs have been very different with not being in person. But again, I think we got and have received some great questions, and we continue to evolve around Ontario One Call and where we need to go. Special thank you to the Ontario One Call staff who helped ensure that today's meeting ran smoothly. Obviously, with technology, we can all have challenges. And I will now ask, shall we have a motion to declare the 2021 Ontario One Call AGM adjourned?
It's Wayne here. I'll make that motion.
It's Nancy Taylor here. I second the motion.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And I think that brings us to an end. Thank you again, everyone.